I get a lot of people trying to dictate the rules of this show that I've noticed. I often get a lot of requests to look at games that aren't free, or games that are free but don't really fit my personal criteria of the show, or most baffling, games that people are already expertly playing in hopes that I will blindly sing the game's praises and validate their own personal opinions, only to later yell at me when I don't agree with them or get a minor detail wrong. Here's the thing, they're not going to convince me to review games that don't fit my criteria. No amount of begging, excuses, twisted logic, or blatant ignorance of points is going to get me to decide otherwise. So why did I decide to review this flavor of the month after being bombarded with dozens of requests ranging from "it's technically free" to "it has a cash shop so it counts"? Simple. I own the game and I wanted an excuse to play it more. This is the MMO Grinder, and it's time to look at Guild Wars 2. Released this year by ArenaNet and published in name only by NCSoft, Guild Wars 2 is a prototypical 3D fantasy MMO, except not really. It's received a ton of praise for taking the genre in a new direction, mostly by breathing new life into already familiar concepts. I need to reiterate something, this game is not free. It's not. Stop saying it is. It's not. I don't care that there's no subscription fee, it's not free. Simple as that. So this is why this is not a numbered episode. This is a free-to-play show, and I stick by that. So yes, if you want a piece of the Guild Wars 2 action, you're gonna have to drop $60, or at least wait until it goes on sale. But I don't want to get into talking about Guild Wars 2 just yet, without talking a little bit about this. Specifically, what's so special about this. Guild Wars 1, aka Prophecies as it's often referred to by its fan base, was released shortly after World of Warcraft had come along and bitch-slapped its competition. The original Guild Wars had one thing up its sleeve, the promise of no subscription fees, and a concept that seemed baffling to current MMO players, as subscription games like EverQuest and WoW seemed to be the only game in town, with the free-to-play market being considered subpar knockoff titles that couldn't hold a candle to the quality of a subscription game. Needless to say, everyone was wondering how Guild Wars was going to get away with this, and it was by making it a lobby-based MMO. Technically. See, in the first game, towns were the only places you'd encounter other players on the fly. The minute you stepped outside the town, you were alone unless you dragged a few other players out there with you. Alternatively, you could grab a few henchmen NPCs that would play the game alongside you if you were sick of all the people around you. The game kept itself alive this way, and even had expansions that would act as standalone games, allowing you to start with the expansion you chose and not requiring any of the others to play the game's existing content. I had my problems with Guild Wars. Skills were built around the PvP system, and often made little to no sense in a PvE environment. Why would you want to go out into the world and adventure if you could only bring along 8 things at a time? The dual class system hampered this even further, as it rendered some secondary classes even more useless, and don't even get me started about how other players wouldn't even consider bringing you along unless you used one of your precious few slots on the Resurrection Signet skill. Instance PvE feels empty, especially after the major twist that happens in the newbie area. The level cap was shockingly low, even driving more of the focus to grind to max level and just play the PvP game. PvE also suffered from an odd pathing system with no platforming, forcing you to take the most convoluted route through what would normally be a very small area. Finally, I hated how missions, despite being quite entertaining and story-driven, something WoW didn't have figured out at the time, would run for over an hour, and could be ended simply because the NPC you needed to escort thought it'd be a good idea to Leroy into a massive group of char near the final part, forcing you to start all over again. And there was no checkpoint system. I've always been a PvE-focused guy as opposed to PvP, but even I'm willing to admit when a game's PvP system is far better than its PvE counterpart. And Guild Wars was unquestionably one of those games. But now with Guild Wars 2 here to completely revamp the formula, let's see what's changed and how much I've warmed up to the world of Tyria. Guild Wars 2 features some amazing graphics, or second-rate graphics if you're some sort of delusional Terra fan. If you're a fan of colorful worlds, Guild Wars 2 should not disappoint. While you can turn down graphics to a lower quality if your PC isn't able to run them as well, they do come across extremely low-res that way, so you might want to at least find a good balance of what you can handle. Overall, the game's aesthetic takes from a kind of a living painting feel, with a lot of watercolors, and that living painting statement becomes quite literal in the cutscenes, with the scenes of motion comic animation to them, as well as unfinished portions of your map looking like broad brushstrokes. There's a bit of on-screen effects as well, like the game becoming dark and reddish when you're at low health, or water droplets covering the screen when you surface from the water. The interface is compact and simple, not swarming you with abilities and options, leaving the screen clear to show off its world. The enemies and players all have a nice set of animations, which actually becomes a gameplay standpoint, as you can study the enemy movements and tell when they're about to perform a more powerful attack, allowing you to prepare accordingly. My biggest gripe related to graphics is this camera. I can tell you without any sense of hyperbole that this is the worst camera I've dealt with in any MMO I've ever played. It's like ArenaNet forgot the cardinal rule of 3D gaming. Everything behind the camera doesn't exist. More baffling is how often the camera tries to zoom in suddenly when something appears between your character and the camera view, causing a lot of moments where the camera will absolutely spaz out, making some of the trickier platforming sections or intense combat situations downright insufferable to deal with. And for the love of God, don't start telling me, oh, it's part of the challenge. No! Do not start forgiving blatant and easily fixable flaws just because you're afraid to admit that your favorite game isn't the absolute pinnacle of perfection. While I've had people tell me that checking free camera fixes this, I hadn't really seen it different, and it also leaves manual steering feeling really off as the camera no longer follows your character's back when you're turning. Keep in mind, ArenaNet has addressed the camera as a problem they're actively working on, so hopefully this gets resolved sometime soon. Okay, I know I'm not going to get away with this review without mentioning the game's music, composed by the legendary Jeremy Soule. It's simply fantastic, but unquestionably muddled by this game's sound effects. This is another one of those soundtracks that needs to be appreciated outside of the game. Inside the game, however, it serves well to highlight the atmosphere and intensity of the situations, with one track called Thunderstorm being my unparalleled favorite. As the majority of his discography is fantasy-based, most notably the Elder Scrolls series, you can expect a lot of booming orchestrations in these tracks, which garners a lot of comparison to movie composer John Williams. There's nothing to be disappointed by here, unless you just don't like that sort of thing, I suppose. Sound design serves its purpose as well, but there's times where I seriously question its judgment. My best example, why does my female human guardian occasionally squeak when she's attacking with a greatsword?
Time to do some real damage.
You also hear a lot of voice acting, not only in the cutscenes, but while you run near NPC characters or fight enemies. Sounds play for buffs, debuffs, and level up, serving as cues, but they get repetitive or sound off at times. Shouting things like "my leg" when afflicted with the cripple debuff doesn't seem logical when the animation shows you being shot in the chest with an arrow. Another issue here is that battles start to sound very repetitive, and some of the things said are so goofy they're reaching the point of memehood. Go ahead and ask any Guild Wars 2 player if they could outrun a centaur.
Is it just me, or am I amazing?
Choosing an account name in this game is very strange. There's a lot of restrictions placed upon what you can have, and I ended up putting mine as Chaos the Dark One. Or for those of you who want to contact me in-game, it's Chaos the Dark One.5613. This account name is linked across all characters you create. Oddly enough, you still log in with your email. Next, you'll be taken to a server selection screen, and everyone you create will be stuck on that server. If you move servers later, all your characters are coming with. As of right now, moving servers is free. Just click on the world selection on the bottom of the character screen, and you'll be taken to a list. As long as the server you choose isn't listed as full, you can transfer there as you wish. You'll get a prompt telling you that you won't be able to transfer again after a day, but as of right now, that's not true. When you're ready to create a character, you'll be taken to the race selection screen. Something you might not notice right away, that if you move your mouse around, the painting shifts the angle of view slightly to match it. If this feature seems completely pointless to you, it's because it is. There are 5 races to choose from: Char, Human, Norn, Asura, and Sylvari. Each race has its own starting area, group of personal quests, and unlockable racial skills. After choosing a race, you'll be able to pick from one of 8 classes: Warrior, Guardian, Elementalist, Ranger, Necromancer, Engineer, Thief, and Mesmer. Each class has a different set of skills and are able to wield both ranged and melee attacks depending entirely on what weapon they're choosing. You may notice that some skills are similar to skills in other classes, i.e. both the Guardian and the Warrior have a skill where they spin around really fast wielding a greatsword, but each class has their own take on the exact details of how their skill works. It's worth trying them all out. Unfortunately, as you might have noticed, you only have 5 slots to create characters with, and will have to purchase additional slots with gems if you want to create one character of each class. It costs 800 gems to unlock an additional slot. Once your class is chosen, you'll be taken to the character creator, which allows you to choose your hairstyle, body type, and face type, with only the face type allowing you to fine-tune your look with sliders. Here you can also choose from a set of armor colors, and any subsequent armor you pick up in the game will follow this pattern. Don't worry about choosing this too much, because you can change the color of your armor at any time once you've started the game. Once you've created your character the way you'd like, you choose a cosmetic option based on your class, which allows you to choose a starting piece of armor, or in the case of rangers, your pet. Then you'll choose your personality type, charm, dignity, or ferocity, which dictates how NPCs converse with your character and what dialogue choices will be used. The last 3 questions vary by your race and will directly affect your personal storyline, which I'll explain later on. Afterward, you're immediately taken to the character's opening instance, which acts as a tutorial, but not as in-depth, giving you a quick taste of how the game plays out. Take the time to get used to the controls here. The game uses WASD movement and target and click attacks, but it's simplified. When starting out, you'll only have one weapon and one skill, but you'll unlock more as you use that weapon type. Some classes, like Elementalists, have alternate methods of attack with the same weapon, essentially having 4 sets of skills with one weapon type. Other classes may allow you to equip 2 weapon sets and switch between them on the fly. Once you've unlocked all skills with a certain weapon type, you'll have them all unlocked no matter if you switch them out for new weapons. Keep in mind that some one-handed weapons can be equipped in the main hand or the offhand, and your skills will vary depending on which hand they're equipped in. Weapon skills are hotkeys 1 through 5, with the remaining hotkeys for skills you'll be able to unlock and modify later on. Another major simplification is how the game handles stats. Unlike many MMO games where the amount of damage you do in melee is attributed to a stat like strength, while a magic user's damage is attributed to intellect, in this game, damage potential, regardless of class or damage type, is all under power. The others are precision, which increases critical hit rate, toughness, which increases armor, and vitality, which increases hit points. There are secondary stats that modify types of attacks and defense, but for the most part, there's the 4 main ones that you'll need to worry about. As mentioned before, the combat system is the same target and click combat you've seen in a lot of MMOs, but there's a bit more emphasis on action. Nearly every skill can be cast while moving, and you need to be moving a lot to avoid incoming attacks and telegraphed AoE damage, usually denoted by a visible circle on the ground. It's a lot more action-based than most MMOs of those types, but still not purely action-based. There's even a whole different set of skills and weaponry from when you're fighting underwater. One major mechanic that people will not shut up about is the dodging mechanic. On the interface, there are 2 curved yellow bars above the health gauge. These are your stamina, or more specifically, your dodge meter. Double tapping in a direction will cause you to dive roll in that direction, rendering you invincible throughout the animation and using up one of those bars. If depleted, it'll begin to refill itself. Obviously, you can use this to negate a lot of incoming damage, but it's not as simple as people make it out to be. Not to mention that while the bar does refill fairly quickly, it's not fast enough to be spammable, and you'll cancel any attack that you were doing while dodging, and it's not always easy to tell when you'll need to dodge out of the way. A final interesting combat mechanic is the combo fields, where certain attacks will leave a field on the ground, which other attacks, when passing through, will gain additional attributes. If an Elementalist leaves a ring of fire on the ground, a ranger can fire arrows through it that'll catch fire as they pass and deal additional damage. If a Guardian uses Symbol of Wrath and then casts Whirling Wrath from within it, the bolts which pass through the field will remove debuffs from allied characters. The system is a massive strategy that allows players to work together, and most notably because of the following aspect of the game. There is no Holy Trinity. For those not in the know, the Holy Trinity is a nickname for the 3 most basic class types in an MMO: tank, healer, and damage. Sure, there are classes more suited to defense, like the Guardian, but they aren't tanks. Sure, a water-attuned Elementalist has skills that can heal nearby players, but they are not healers. No one class is shoehorned into a role, but this does lead to an issue that I'll get into much later. If you're looking to break free from the chains of these former class-defined roles, you might want to give this a shot for this reason alone. To better augment your class to a role you plan to fill, you can choose several traits once you reach level 11 and purchase an Adept's training manual from your class-specific trainer. These books go for 10 silver for the first, 1 gold for the second at level 40, and 2 gold for the last one at level 60. You'll need to purchase the higher level books in order to place points more deeply into a specific trait. Putting enough points in each unlocks secondary traits as well, such as doing extra damage with a certain skill or weapon. Treading back a bit, there are secondary skills you can unlock with skill points. These skill slots are unlocked by level and require a certain amount of skill points to equip. You always start with a healing skill, but you can choose to unlock a different one with your skill points. Afterwards, you get more that may grant a passive bonus as well as an active one. Much later, you'll even unlock an elite skill slot, which usually unleashes a powerful attack for a short amount of time and costs anywhere from 10 to 30 skill points to unlock. Skill points are earned by finding skill challenges, blue chevrons on the map, and completing them. They range from being as simple as clicking a point or looting an item you need to use from your inventory to fighting a mini-boss or a wave of enemies. Death is handled a bit differently as well. When you're downed, you have a chance to fight your way back to life, similar to Borderlands. At this point, you'll be down to 4 skills, usually an attack, a repel, and a self-heal. If you manage to kill an enemy, or the enemy dies by someone else's hands, or you replenish your bar with a self-heal, you'll revive with half health. Alternatively, if another player is near, they can revive you by simply pressing F while standing next to you. If your bar runs out, you'll die, and you'll have to either wait for someone to revive you or spend a bit of cash to respawn at the waypoint of your choice. Speaking of waypoints, that's the crux of the fast travel system in the game. You can travel to any waypoint for a small fee at any time, as long as you're not actively in combat, so no cheap escaping there. Waypoints are scattered along the map and must be unlocked by manually traveling to them first. The second form of fast travel is free, but localized usually to certain towns by use of the Asura gates. Wait, those look kind of familiar.
I think it's a Stargate.
It's the Fargate! F! It's different from that movie which I have never seen, so how would I copy it?
Chill, man, it's alright.
This game has a huge emphasis on exploration, made all the more obvious by this seriously massive map and worlds to explore. The first time you walk around the starting area and start to feel overwhelmed, do yourself a favor and head out to the world map, then zoom out. You might faint. The emphasis on exploration offers many a reward as well, as you'll experience by discovering waypoints, uncovering areas of the map, and completing various tasks, like locating skill challenges, Vista Points, and completing all the tasks available. Doing so will grant a whole treasure trove of cash shop items each time you clear out a major section. Vista Points often prove to be the most challenging, even though some will consist of a literal staircase leading right to them, others will have you scratching your head just wondering how the hell you're supposed to get up there. These are often the ones that involve some sort of tricky platforming, made all the worse by this horrible camera! If you truly hate yourself, you can even find hidden platforming puzzles on each map that offer their own rewards for completing them. Of course, the major focus of the game is the quest system, and just how differently it handles it, so let's go over the three major quest types. The only trackable quests come in the form of Renown Hearts. Golden hearts on the map, which you have to perform a set number of tasks in a general area in order to fill a progress bar. Once filled, the Renown Hearts become a vendor that sell items based on their tasks, area, or profession, and use a currency called karma. For example, a farmer might offer items like produce or trinkets based on farming equipment. You'll also receive a letter in your mail system containing a text thank you and a small amount of cash. Once completed, you can't repeat a Renown Heart on the same character. I personally find Renown Hearts to be painfully hit and miss, going from taxing to repetitive to downright annoying, and even though there are multiple ways to complete them, sometimes all of your options are boring, convoluted, or terrible, and you might groan in frustration every time you complete something, only see the bar barely squeak forward. Some hearts get more interesting by transforming you into a creature, but even they have a chance to be slow and annoying. Your best hope to complete a lot of these is to have a dynamic event come along that counts towards the heart completion. So, what's a dynamic event? It's really the main leveling point of this game and what you're expected to perform most often. When wandering around performing Renown Heart tasks or occasionally just minding your own business, you might notice something pop up on your map, usually denoted with an orange circle. These are dynamic events, which are essentially active quests that happen on occasion depending on where you are. Perform the task it asks and you'll receive a score and experience, karma, and cash reward based on your participation once it ends. While a lot of these can be random, some can be started by a player talking to a certain NPC, others literally come running to you by way of NPC and asking your character for help, and others might chain into new ones after they've completed. In one example, you could be escorting a research group as they search for artifacts, and even after the event ends, if you follow the NPCs back to their camp, you might get involved in another event once their camp comes under siege. This makes the world feel much more alive, but it's not without its downsides. First off, you may go a good while without seeing one, making the game feel rather empty if you're just looking to quest. Other times you may get overwhelmed with them, and several might happen in the same general area, and you won't be able to complete or participate in all of them, forcing you to pick and choose. My personal favorite, although not a gripe as much as it's an oddity, is when you're minding your own business and you're suddenly rewarded for an event you don't even remember taking part in, just because you happen to be somewhat near it. The last, and my favorite type of quests, are the personal quests, where you're taken through your personal storyline. In addition to the quest changing depending on what you chose in the character creator, there are multiple branches you can take, changing what you do in the story. Although I will admit this occasionally ends up with you deciding if you want to kill the same enemies in setting A or setting B, but the choices usually have more of a direct impact. Your first set of quests relate to a first question choice, your second set related to your second question, and the third involves you choosing to join one of 3 orders in order to lead the assault on the dragons that threaten Tyria. The battle philosophy of the Derman Priory involves the use of artifacts and magic, the battle philosophy of the Order of Whispers being stealth, infiltration, and information gathering, and the battle philosophy of the Vigil being Zero Dragons! My issue with these stems from the fact that there are some massive level gaps in between each step, and sometimes the stories aren't complete chains, usually one major story taking up about 10 levels. It really doesn't lend itself to the urgency of stopping an arson plot or warning the city of an impending attack when you can literally take as long as you want before doing it. For the sake of my OCD, I usually don't perform personal quests until I've reached the next set of 10 levels. This way I could get the full experience of a level 20 through 30 story in one go, and not have to take long, awkward pauses throughout it. Oh, and if you think being high level means you can blow through low level content for an easy time, you have another thing coming. Guild Wars 2 automatically scales your level down to whatever area or instance you happen to be in. This makes the fights in the area still a decent challenge and doesn't make low level questing boring. You'll even occasionally find gear drops that match your current level, even if you're clearing out a newbie zone. Yeah, I know having higher level gear is a little bit like being overpowered for the area, but go ahead and try to take on several dozen enemies at once. Or better yet, try to solo a boss monster and tell me how badass your gear makes you. Go ahead. I'll wait. Equipment is fairly standard in this game. You have a slot for a helmet, shoulders, gloves, chest, legs, and boots. It's nice to know that the shoulders in this game aren't the floating Liefeldian monstrosities that World of Warcraft seems so stupidly fond of. And even so, you can still choose to hide them. I knew that wasn't that hard to do. Side equipment consists of rings, a necklace, accessories, and back armor, but these don't drop nearly as often, but can be crafted or purchased from karma vendors. You can augment most equipment pieces with runes and jewels that will give a slight boost to their stats. And don't forget about your underwater equipment slots either. There's a repair system in place here, and constant death will cause your armor to degrade away to nothing. Literally, you'll be fighting in your underwear if you don't find your way to a repair NPC every now and again. The loot system is pretty painless in this game, even if bag space is a bit of an issue. Kinda. I'll explain. First off, you can loot any nearby corpse or node by pressing F near it. Press F again when the window is up and you'll take everything by default. Keep in mind there are some items that aren't loot but secondary weapons, like rocks or sticks that you can use in battle. If you're in possession of one of these, your action bar will show what skills are available by holding it. If you want to lose the item, just press the switch weapon button, which will be labeled drop item. You'll notice you're pretty limited on bag space with only a paltry 4-slot bag as a reward for completing the tutorial. You can buy more bags or create them in the crafting system. Here's a couple tips for people finding their bags are filling too quickly. When you're in the inventory screen, you can click on the gear in the upper right corner to pull up a drop-down menu. In there we'll read Deposit Collectibles. Doing this will send any crafting item you might have picked up directly into a secondary inventory you can access at the crafting station. This will free up a lot of room, and any items you toss in your collection will be accessible across all your characters. If you end up with a ton of weapons and armor you don't want, you can simply vendor it, or if you need crafting materials, you can salvage it with various salvage kits. This is the easiest way to gain ungatherable materials like leather and cloth. Gatherable materials consist of ores, lumbers, and plants, easily spotted on the map and looted by pressing F. You'll need a specific tool equipped for each: picks for ore, axes for lumber, and sickles for plants. They usually come in stacks of 100 and sold by many NPCs. They also come in varying quality, so if you attempt to gather a high-level node with a low-level tool, you'll only receive vendor junk instead. Nodes are shared among everyone, so don't be afraid if you see someone running towards that tree you planned on chopping down. You can chop it just as easily. Okay, having spoken about crafting far too much without explaining it, it's a pretty basic MMO crafting system with a few quirks. You can learn 2 professions, and all professions are crafting professions, as gathering can be done with anyone with the proper tools. Each profession uses 2 types of materials, like the armorsmith who uses ore primarily for plating and cloth secondary for lining and upgrades. You'll refine your raw materials to make usable materials, and then craft from those components that you'll need to create an item. One very confusing part is the Discovery tab, which is actually the best way to level up your crafting. When starting out, you're given a very basic crafting recipe that'll create some level 5 gear. If you use some of your materials to create an upgrade component, instead of crafting normally, create the components you need, and then click on the Discovery tab. Place your upgrade component in one box, and then place your regular components. If complete, you'll be prompted that you can make a new recipe, and you'll create a more powerful, higher-level item. Keep doing this to level up your crafting and create more powerful items. Just keep in mind that armors and weapons upgrade in level increments of 5, and unless your character is being funded by another character, you're more than likely to be out of the level range of what you can craft. If you really want to try your hand at making the good stuff, and don't want a pile of crafted materials you can't use or don't want to sell or salvage, you can drop items into the Mystic Forge to create rare and even some of the legendary weapons in the game. Last loot-related thing to mention, you might find an unidentified dye while looting. If you double-click that bottle, you'll gain a random dye color. Double-click on that bottle and it'll be added to your list of dye colors that you can add to your armor. These are also highly sought after, so if you value cash over cosmetics, feel free to sell these on the auction house. Overall, this game is a polished but not perfect MMO that takes a lot of interesting ideas and meshes them together. It still suffers from an atrocious camera, some terribly high enemy respawn rates, and the occasional event-breaking bug, but I'm willing to admit that I enjoy this game, in decent-sized sittings. I hope I'm making it clear that I do enjoy this game, gripes and all, because guess who we're talking about next? You know, I got a bit just a bit of guff for my side quest where I spent the last 2 minutes harping on the community's apparent zealotry towards this game, especially during a time when not all that many people had even played it. Now that the game is released, I don't seem to hear that much from them. In fact, some people seem to be jumping on the bandwagon of claiming the game is terrible. People constantly name-dropping the title in unrelated MMO videos and threads is still pretty common, but at least I'm running across far less images of this game juxtaposed against religious art. With that out of the way, let's go into the most notable feature of Guild Wars 2. Everything is shared. Everything. See an enemy being fought? Take a swing at it. You'll get some XP, credit if it's something you need to kill for a quest, and most amazingly, your own loot table. No one can steal your kill or even tag it as theirs by hitting it first. Also, as mentioned before, collection nodes like ore mines and trees are also shared. So even if someone loots the node before you do, the node will still be there for you to use until you loot it yourself. If you're the type of person who wants the cookie-cutter ideal spec and gear, or if you're the type of MMO player who wants to take the quest in a very linear path to get to the max level as fast as possible, or if you've ever used the term Care Bear to describe the idea of cooperating with other people, this probably isn't the game for you. The game's main focus is cooperation. With everything shared, it makes partying almost completely pointless, unless you want to bring your friends along or take them with you into story instances. Most baffling, though, is the lack of a player-to-player trading system. For those who don't get what I mean, I'll explain. In most MMO games, you have a trade option between players where you can put up a separate window and drop your items in it. Another player, in turn, can drop their items or money into the window, and you can click confirm if you want to swap the items. If you looted an awesome greatsword but you're an elementalist and your warrior friend just picked up an equally awesome staff, you can't just outright trade the item with them. That's not to say you can't trade the item, but the only way to do it is through the mail system. And you'll need a certain degree of trust, as if someone tells you they want to sell you this amazing sword for a few gold, and you send over the cash, you have to hope they'll actually send over the sword as promised. Guess all MMOs need some way for people to be jerks to you. Also, don't get too excited when logging in to see you have mail. There's a pretty good chance you see mail from gold-selling sites, but you can report them once you've received one. It's a bit less than I usually saw when I started this game, but it's not entirely gone. If you want to make a good amount of money, or lose it, you can access the auction house called the Trading Post in this game, at any time. Here you can buy and sell items to players across all servers. While you can shop and sell items here anywhere in the world, you can only obtain the items you've purchased or profits you've gained by visiting a Trading Post NPC. The Trading Post is also where you'll access features that I'll cover in the cash shop. Okay, so what's a game called Guild Wars without guilds? Making a guild in this game is simple as ever, considering that a slight mess you had to go through in the first game to make one. All you have to do is press G to open the guild panel and click Create Guild, where you'll be asked to create a name for the guild and a tag, a small abbreviation that'll appear in brackets next to your name. It costs 1 silver to start a guild. Alternatively, you can join already existing guilds. Here's the real kicker. You can join multiple guilds, so if you have a group who likes to PvP and another with just a bunch of friends who enjoy playing the game, you can be in both guilds and switch between who you want to actively represent when it suits you. Switching who you represent places you in the guild's chat as well, and it works cross-server. Guilds also earn perks based on the performance of the players within it. When you earn enough influence points, guild leaders and officers can queue perks like your own custom emblem, armor that displays that emblem, or things like guild banks. These perks take time to unlock in addition to the points, so you may have to wait a few days for your next perk to take effect. While guilds are cross-server, influence is only earned on the server when you're currently on. So if your guild has everything unlocked in Northern Shiver Peaks, you won't have anything on Henge of Dinravi. There are PvE instances in the game, but oh lord are they tough. Expect quite a few wipes running your first time through, especially when you think you're doing well enough only to be one-shot to death by an attack you didn't see coming. What I see as the main problem is the lack of aforementioned Holy Trinity leaves the roles poorly defined. There's too much damage going around for any one player to tank an enemy, and there's little one can do to pull aggro away from someone. And with no defined healers, most healing is left on the individual player, and a lot of the times what you have available is too little too late to save you. The system is best used to take advantage of combo fields, using them to boost characters' attack powers or keep the damage going around down, but it's tough to coordinate in text with many players that can't keep up with the sheer amount of crap on the screen to take the appropriate actions. Again, I know there's a dodge mechanic, but it is really tough to avoid an enemy move when there's too much flashing going on obscuring all the telegraphs. The instances are excellent ways to obtain good gear and usually have interesting stories to tell, but you can easily make your way through high levels without ever setting foot in one. Now, what was originally the main focus of the first Guild Wars is a separate foothold in this game as well. There are two types of PvP, World vs. World and Structured. World v World is a massive battle on a separate map, allowing players from several servers to meet and control a battlefield to earn bonuses for their server. You can fend off attackers on the Borderland worlds or fight in the massive Eternal Battlegrounds. The point is to capture and hold structures around the playfield, using massive forces and siege weaponry to whittle down or defend a base. The mode is large but highly criticized for being nothing more than whoever zergs wins, as the server with the highest population is usually the one to take it all. Server imbalance also causes some servers to be able to queue into the battleground instantly, while others are forced to wait for minutes, even hours, before they can enter. Playing in World v World levels your character to 80 automatically, but you won't have the perks or gear of a true level 80 player. You can access the World v World queues from your main screen at any time. Structured keeps things to a smaller scale, only allowing 8 vs 8, keeping all battles in lobbies and granting the same gear to every player, making the battles more skill than population or gear-based. Many still consider this a far cry from the open arenas of the original Guild Wars, but it's at least a lot closer than World vs World. Structured PvP also uses PvP-only rewards and levels called Glory to raise your status within it. To access structured PvP, head to Lion's Arch and head into the Heart of the Mist Asura Gate, which allows you to set up your character, practice your skills, and queue up for lobbies by talking to the PvP browser NPC. There is a serious issue going on in this game with botters. The sheer amount of time I've run across them is baffling, and either this is the most coordinated group of rangers I've ever seen, or some sort of asshattery is afoot. Botting isn't uncommon in MMO games, but I can easily count on one hand the number of times I've unquestionably witnessed it going on in other MMOs. If you're wondering why there's so many, it's due entirely to the shared loot aspect. The more bots looting the same enemy, the more loot for all of them. It also comes across very blatant and obvious. I had quite a few words for this in chat and came across something I wasn't expecting. Apologists for this behavior. Specifically people claiming they weren't hurting anybody. Seriously, guys? I understand that the systems of Guild Wars 2, sharing loot and credit between all the involved players, makes this a little bit less of an issue when you're doing monster grinding, but if you're not seriously considering the long-term detrimental effects this can have on a game, all I've got to say is, welcome to MMOs. You must be new here. Enjoy your cheap crafting mats. They'll go really good with your worthless gems and stolen accounts. If the players don't let go of their zealotry and aren't willing to understand that saying something is wrong with their game doesn't translate to hating it, they can improve the game from within. It's nice to know that ArenaNet has addressed the camera is a problem, but don't let it stop there. Don't forgive flaws while the developer is still willing to listen to you, or you'll end up with a product that's made to the whim of the company and not the people who play it. Think about it. Cash shop currency is called gems, which suffer from the odd exchange rate of 800 gems for $10. Alternatively, you can head right to the currency exchange tab to exchange your in-game cash for gems, and vice versa. The exchange rates fluctuate from day to day, but it seems gems are steadily getting more expensive to obtain with in-game cash. The alternative essentially amounts to legal in-game gold selling, making the option of buying gold from an outside source seem like a pointlessly risky maneuver. Not that the gold sellers aren't trying, though. What I consider most useful to the shop is the fact that you can purchase more character slots. They run 800 gems or $10 a pop. It will take a good while to earn that normally, so it's your call whether you want to grind in-game cash or drop your actual money for a new one. You can also purchase additional spots for bags in your bank, even if the system is generous enough with the collection storage feature, as those are what's going to clog most of your inventory. If you want to look like a powerful armor-bedecked badass without having to actually earn the gear for it, you can purchase a few cosmetic armor skins that apply to either your battle armor or your town outfits. There aren't too many to choose from at this moment, but I can expect to see a lot more of these making an appearance. Beyond the expected addition of experience boosters and other usable boosts, you'll find a share of Black Lion chests, which contain Cash Shop loot and need to be opened with the Cash Shop's Black Lion keys. It's a common but despised practice in MMOs to have these loot boxes, which more often than not don't contain anything that someone would find useful enough to spend cash on, but at the very least they don't drop constantly, and can be sold on the trading post, and you can still earn keys in-game for completing areas and certain quests. You'll just find a lot more boxes than you will have the keys to open them is all. This was a long and wordy episode, wasn't it? Okay, I'm gonna say this again. This episode was an exception. This game is not free. If you want to try it, you will have to pay for it. After playing the beta, I knew I was going to purchase this game, and with no subscription cost, I don't feel bad when I'm unable to play this for extended periods of time. Guild Wars 2 fixes all the issues I had with Guild Wars, but there's still a lot of room for improvement, and despite enjoying the game, it's also one of the only MMOs to frustrate me to the point of yelling at the screen. If this video told you enough for you to want to get past that initial purchase, great. But if you're still on the fence, just hope they release some sort of trial, or maybe just ask a friend who plays to let you hop on for a while. Here's my final rating. Take the tried and true formula of your standard fantasy MMO and tack on a bunch of features that simplify the experience for newcomers and veterans alike, and that's Guild Wars 2 in a nutshell. The game's focus on cooperation allows people to join in without feeling like they're intruding or stealing anyone's thunder, and it provides a much calmer and more relaxing community experience. The game's massive focus on exploration and discovery makes this a great game for completionists who want to explore every nook and cranny of a world and marvel at all the secrets they uncover. You know how I hate limited character slots, so my first suggestion would be to nab a few more, at least rounding yourself out to 8 to experience each class to its full potential. Space is also limited in the form of bag slots, and even though there are ways to lessen the pain, people on long questing binges will start having to make loot sacrifices fairly often, so this might be something to think about. Of course, if you're not willing to drop actual cash for these perks, you can always just earn them in-game by trading your currency. It'll just take a while. If you're sick of sword and sorcery MMOs, this isn't something that's going to bring you back. You still click and attack, you still use medieval weaponry, armor, and magic. The systems are tweaked, but this is hardly untread ground. If you prefer showing your status in the form of the rewards you've earned and the loot you've equipped and can't stand the thought of others getting the exact same rewards you do, you might not enjoy this title for that reason alone. Now for something I never thought I'd say, if you loved everything about the original Guild Wars game, you might not like this one. With the focus shifted to PvE, the game heading into level grinding territory, and the worlds being populated and explorable rather than instants, this game is practically an entirely different experience from the original title that preceded it. If the arena PvP focus of the first game is what kept you playing it, you'll probably just want to stay there. Next time I'll be doing my Halloween episode with another non-numbered title that I cannot wait to get back into.
I think he went through the Stargate.
It is a Fargate! From the makers of Independence Day, we will give it a mohawk in the wheelchair if you need help.